idam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat tena tyakte navunjita magrudha kasya siddhanam kurvanneveha karmani jijivishet satagam samam evam tvai nanyatetosti na karma lipyate nare asurya namate loka andhena tamasa brutam tanste pretya abhigachanti ye kecha atmahano jana anejadekam manaso javiyah nainaddeva apnuvan purvamarshate taddhavato anyan atyeti tishthate tasminnapo matarishva dadhati. So as you have been seeing so far, you must have seen the expansiveness of the theme that is dealt with in this Upanishad. It talks about God, the reality, both the Saguna as well as the Nirguna aspect of it. From the standpoint of the Absolute, the consciousness which is changeless, again from the standpoint of the changes, that is the creation itself, both the aspect of it is talked about. And when we say the God, as I told you, it is no more one name with one form, but it is the name with all forms. Usually in the world, in our word, in our behavior, or in our Vyavahar in this world, empirical usages, every time we see that one particular word has only one particular meaning. But whereas in case of this God, the word, it doesn't represent one thing, not one form, but it is the name which at once represents all forms. There is nothing other than it. When you say God, there is no question of telling God and. Please grasp this point, please. There is no question of telling God and. That and doesn't exist there. When you say individual and, yes, that is truth, sir. But when you say God, it at once includes everything. You cannot say God and something. It is like telling you cannot say Trinidad and San Fernando. Not possible, sir. The moment you say Trinidad, San Fernando is included. Trinidad and Port of Spain you cannot say. The moment you say Trinidad, Port of Spain is included. So when you say God, there is no question of telling and, because it is one word which at once describes everything. At once means everything, where the individual doesn't exist. What happens is, in the very contemplation, sometimes it becomes difficult to grasp this reality, because in the very appreciation of this God, this individuality must be totally annihilated. But the individuality is afraid of its own annihilation and dissolution. Therefore it never gives itself up. That is where comes the tragedy, the ultimate bondage, the ultimate deterrent in the understanding of one's own self. What is to be done is, the person in the very recognition that that particular thing must be dissolved. You must have all heard the story of, that Bali, Vamana and Bali, Vamana avatar, Bhagavan Krishna, Vishnu comes in the avatar of a dwarf. And then he is begging this land from Bali. Bali is the one who is the mightiest of the demons. Now he was very, very arrogant, and naturally Bhagavan Vishnu comes in the form of a Vamana, a dwarf. It is because when you are begging something from somebody, you can't be just holding your head high. You have to be a Vamana, a dwarf. So he comes in the avatar, the incarnation of a dwarf, and he asks Bali a particular favor. And Bali has agreed that he shall give whatever the Lord wants. And when thus Bali has asked, Bhagavan says, I want only Tripada Medini. If you know that story, the 3 feet land only I want. Naturally this Vamana, Bali, the great demon, he must have thought, small fellow, after all small footprint also, 3 small feet land I can definitely afford to give. He said, all right, sir, I am going to give it. And when he agreed for that, now that is the time Bhagavan Vishnu, he takes the own form. In 1 foot he completely covers of the Bhur, then the next one the Bhuvaha, then the Shubhaha, as they say that Swargamartya Patala, in all the 3 feet he completely covers it up. Thereafter, when he sees his own form, he sees this vastness of this form, now Bhagavan says, in the story goes, in 1 particular foot he completely covered up the Bhu. Bhu means the Prithvi. Then the other one he covered the Antariksha, the space. Now the 3rd feet is left out. Now that is the time Bhagavan says, where exactly shall I put this 3rd feet? It is because there is no other place. In a sense, he has almost covered up everything. Now there is only one place where the God is not, and which that is the time Bhagavan, what is his name? Vamana, what is his name? Vali, the Rakshas, the demon, he says, oh Lord, put that foot on my head. It is because when Bhagavan is 1 foot has completely covered the Prithvi, this earth, he has no place anymore. He has only one place in Patala. Therefore, when he says, oh Lord, please place that foot on my land, and with that Bhagavan has crossed him to the down, to the to the Netherlands. Thus he completely becomes all-pervasive. What the story means is, here this individuality, the tiny one, is the Vali. He is the one, instead of Vali means in Sanskrit also, offering. Vali, when you are in the prasad, you are offering to the God, that also in Sanskrit known as the Vali. So that Vali, instead of offering himself, now what he is doing is offering everything else. Anyway, when that Vali now comes, when Vali, Bhagavan comes in the form of the Vamana, now this individual is arrogance. Now he says, oh Lord, you can be everywhere. Now when he has granted that particular favor, but unfortunately doesn't understand that in the very process of giving out everything to God, he must be annihilated. Since he does not know what to do, that is the time he has offered himself to God, that please place your foot on my head, and thereafter Bhagavan has crossed him down, and thereafter there is nothing else but Vishnu, what you say as the Vyapakatvat Vishnu, which is all-pervasive. So in this is the dramatization of the process that takes place in the understanding of one's own self. The individual having accepted that perhaps God is everywhere existing, still the fellow is existing, still the fellow is there, standing there, as though standing apart and trying to know God. This is one thing you shall have the greatest difficulty, sir. You can never know God. You can never know the reality. You can never see God. You cannot see the reality. You can only be God. You can only be the reality. In the sense, when you appreciate what exactly the God is, it is no more one name with one form, but at once all forms. Your body, your physical body, your mind has to automatically annihilate it. It has automatically to be offered at the altar of the Lord. It is something you really cannot stand apart. It so happens one day, it was, like the child was, he was studying for his exams. When he was studying for the exams, it so happened he was disturbed by sleep. The sleep from nowhere it comes. Especially when you are going to study for exam, the sleep always comes. So the child got very angry. He said, next time this sleep comes, I am going to really punish this sleep. So he waited for the sleep. But the tragedy is, as long as you are waiting for the sleep does not come. And when the sleep comes, you are not there. That is how exactly it is. As long as you are waiting for the understanding and enlightenment of the God, that long you shall never understand. But the moment you give up, that is the moment of understanding. The Anand, the disciple of Buddha, was always waiting for this enlightenment to take place. But then unfortunately it never happened. He was with Buddha for 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, but nothing happened. So he goes to Buddha and approaches him, Sir, I have been with you for such a long time. How come this enlightenment still doesn't done? That time Buddha says, you still have to wait for some time. And after 15 to 16 years of meditation, one day he gives up. The moment he gives up, that is the moment he gets enlightenment, because he comes to the absolute restfulness. That is why you can see the sleeping Buddha, which is another form of Ananda. He is a sleeping Buddha. He is the one that's lying down in absolutely relaxed posture. The moment he gives up, that is the time he gets it. And you shall see that as long as, sir, there is a type of agitation, restlessness, you cannot bring out the best thing out of it. Only when you are absolutely cool, you are absolutely quiet, absolutely type of sensitive, there is no question of any distraction whatsoever. That is the moment the best thing comes out of it. Definitely a scientist, when he is discovering something, his mind is not in total agitation. In the moment of discovery is a moment of total stillness. Long before the atom bomb blasts in the desert or in the womb of the ocean, it has already blasted in the mind of the scientist. In the laboratory, he has already done that. Same thing also a sculptor, a painter. Long before he sketches it outside, long before he sculpts it out of a stone, already has seen the vision within himself. What he is trying to do now is nothing but is just transforming that vision within into outside world. So that is where everything is already seen, sir. In that moment of stillness, I suppose the mind is in total agitation, it shall be very, very difficult to produce it. It so happened one day a Buddhist monk, as in a Jain monastery, the person was writing the great principle of Buddha. As he was writing, every time he shall be sitting down and writing that principle, then he asked one of his disciples, "Sir, how is the writing? Is it perfect?" Now the disciple says, "That is not right, sir." Then again he sits down, with all attention, again he starts writing. Then again his students ask, "Sir," he asked the student, "How is the writing?" He says, "No, it is not complete." Then he said, "All right." Again he started writing. Third time, fourth time, fifth time. Now the student all the time says, "No, sir, it is not writing. It is not good, it is not all right." Then it so happens the student goes out inside for some time, and that is the time the teacher says, "Now this fellow is not watching, let me write it down quickly." And he just wrote it down. When the student comes back, the teacher says, "Sir, how is this writing now?" The student says, "Absolutely perfect." Because in the moment, even he was totally restful, there is no question of agitation, there is nobody watching it, in an effortless way he did it. And that is what you can say, masterliness means effortlessness. You're driving, if you are even in your driving, if you are a top-class driver, an ace driver, there is an effortlessness about your driving. Suppose there is so much a jerk and a bump and things like that, there is so much of, like a starting trouble and all this type of gear changes, all the time with the noise. That means you are not a type of a particular, you are not an efficient driver. Exactly the same way, sir. This effortlessness, that is the truth, that is the ultimate hallmark of wisdom, where there is no question of agitation whatsoever. And in that moment the discovery takes place. As long as you are sitting down with a determination, or suppose you are sitting down that I want to understand this truth, there is reality, I want to see the God, that long, your very presence itself denies the enlightenment. Your very presence itself destroys the whole perception. What is to be done is the person must drop out in the very, it happens. I do not know how to talk about that particular moment. It is so difficult to talk about that particular moment. You have to see that and be with yourself, so there is no other choice. There is no question of somebody describing you, as like they say, suppose there is a flower here. This fragrance, how do you describe somebody? It is impossible to describe the fragrance of the flower. The best way is to you smell it for yourself. Thereafter you cannot describe the fragrance. That is what is understanding. It is something indescribable. It is something unthinkable. You cannot even thought about it. The moment you are thinking, it is not what it is. The moment you are speaking, it is not what it is. And that is what has to be seen within one's own self. It is because in the realm of God, as I told you, when you say God, He being all pervasive, there is no question of a place where it is not existing. When you say one name, it at once means everything, and it includes your body also. Just like when you say earth, there is no question of earth and Asia, earth and Europe. There is no question of this planet earth and something else. The moment you name it, the whole planet is included. The moment you say God, the whole creation is included. Therefore, in that very moment of recognition, in that very moment of appreciation, you know that this physical body is already included in the totality, the mind is already included in totality, and this I as such, as a knower, doesn't exist, but you abide in silence, the stillness, that is your nature. So if at all you are trying to do it, it will be like the mullah's problem. It so happened one day, the Nasiruddin Mullah, the story goes, that he was in the night, everybody is sleeping in the street, and the mullah slowly comes out of his room. And one neighbor also was, he's a late night fellow, he's a late night bird, he also doesn't go to sleep that early. So he saw mullah is coming out of his room. So he was very much, type of little curious as to what is happening. So when the mullah comes out, and the mullah looks at, he stands near his own bedroom window and looks through his own bedroom window. The fellow was asking, what is this fellow doing? I mean, what is happening here? Why is he looking through his own bedroom window? So the fellow comes and says, Mullah, what are you trying to do? What are you looking at there? The mullah says, no, people say that I walk on my sleep. I want to see whether the fellow is walking or not. Now think of it. Now having come out, how are you going to know that the fellow is walking or walking in a sleep or not? You cannot watch yourself sleeping. It is very, very difficult. You cannot do that. Once you are gone sleeping, you are not existing. The person wants to know, he wants to know about his enlightenment. He wants to watching his enlightenment. That is why people go on imagining that lights are entering into his body, the sound is blasting in his head, the colors are absolutely bursting inside his head. All this type of stupid imagination goes on. Please understand, sir, the moments of enlightenment is not a burst of color, it is not a burst of sound, none of these things is there. It is something absolute stillness. Even that is not the word, sir, because if I say stillness, you will sit down there and try to still your mind. As long as you are struggling, as long as you are trying to still it, you are the one who is creating the absolute total agitation, sir. There is no question of falling over, there is no question of any type of effort there involved there. The person has to see it, just be it within himself. There is no question of your seeing God. You cannot see God, sir. Any type of perception is there, what we call as the manasika ikshana syat. In Sanskrit they say that it's a mental perception, it's a physical perception. Suppose, please understand, if suppose the perception of God is the ultimate in everything, naturally the Krishna for whom you are dying every day now, oh Lord, if you can only appear before me, all my problems will be solved. Then Arjuna was having Krishna all the time at his disposal. He doesn't have to pray for his appearance. He was with him all the time. Then Arjuna doesn't need any teaching. Why those 18 chapters of teaching for what? Don't you think, sir? If suppose the perception of the God, are you getting that point, please? If the perception of that particular form is the ultimate in the understanding, is ultimate in the devotion, what will happen? Then Arjuna doesn't need any teaching. Krishna was always around. There is no necessity of teaching at all. But every time Bhagavan says, hey Arjuna, Gyantva mam santirucchesi. If you know me, you shall gain the absolute peace, you shall get the absolute understanding. What does it mean, sir? Immediately it means this physical body, but knowing one's physical body is not the enough. Thereafter the person must go far beyond. Go beyond this physical body. That is why you can see that in your relationship, from the standpoint of the body, standpoint of the mind, standpoint of the intellect, standpoint of the absolute, the deeper your level of understanding, the deeper your level of communication, the relationship is that stable. Suppose the relationship is very gross, is a physical relationship, nothing more than that. It will drop out, it will break away just in a moment. The moment your interest in that body is over, or his or her interest in this body is over, whole thing is finished. But suppose there is a relationship which depends on the little better, in a deeper level, in a mental, in an emotional level it is gone. There is love and affection. Then for some time that will thrive. But still better relationship will be there when the intellectual is same togetherness. Intellectually that togetherness is there, the same type of thinking is there, you can always think it out. And that is where the real companionship begins, sir. Now if it is so, just think of it, if it is so, what to talk of the absolute oneness where there is no division whatsoever? At least physically there shall be always different. Mentally there shall be always difference. Intellectually there shall be always difference. But in the level of the absolute there cannot be indifference. One who has struck that harmony with the whole creation, from that standpoint, there is nothing called a division whatsoever. There is no question of fearing any particular relationship at all. It is because from that standpoint, everybody is absolutely wonderful. There is no question of breaking away at any time. So what is to be done is, the person must see that truth within one's own self. Knowing the body is not knowing everything. When suppose somebody says, please think of it, a person, a prime minister phones you up. Sir, suppose you ask me a question, do you know Rajiv Gandhi? I say yes. What do I know out of him? Just I know the name. That is not knowing, sir. Suppose do you know his physical body? Even if you know his body, that is not enough, sir. Do you know his mind? Then only it is more interesting. Do you know his mind? How exactly it functions? Do you know his intellect? What exactly are his ideas? If you go through that, thereafter some mysteries are unraveled, but yet knowing the mind is not knowing the person, knowing the intellect is not knowing the person, knowing the body is not knowing the person, because in that level the changes are inevitable. You cannot keep track of it. Are you getting that point, please? The physical level you can never keep track of the person, because changes are inevitable at the changing realm. At the realm of perception, physical body, mind and intellect, the changes are something inevitable. You cannot just accept that changelessness at the level of the body. From the absolute standpoint, there is always a changelessness. There you don't have to keep track of any changes, because no changes take place in that. It is like one day it so happened, a child was in his classroom and the teacher asked him, son, how old are you? The child says, I'm 16. Now the child says, the teacher asks, last year you told you were 16 and this year also you are 16. He said, how can he tell you one thing last year and another thing this year? Hey, that is not speaking the truth. There the truth is to say one thing last year and to say another thing this year, because it is continuously changing. Here the falsehood is the truth. See that? It is not that you don't have to stick to that statement of 16 all the time. In a changing realm, changes are truth. And do not at any time try to be changing at the changeless level, and here at this level of the body and the mind, try to see a changeless reality. It will not work out, sir. To see the change at the realm of change, And to see the changelessness in the realm of changelessness, that is the perception of reality, please. So here is something, please, at any time, when you know the person at the level of the body, you really do not know anything about him. His intellect, his mind is something complicated. And knowing the mind again is not the ultimate, sir, because always there will be changes in perceptions. That is how you can see that every relationship begins with darling, isn't it? But ends up with all divorce. How it happens, sir? It is because the relationship is not that deep. There is so much of disparity between the minds, so much of disparity between the intellect. Of course there is disparity in this physical body, and the person just the relationship completely dies away. But once you hit that absolute level, there is no question of your getting lost at any time, because you know exactly what it is. Same thing also in relation to God. Just because the appearance of God is there, it shall be another wonderful experience in a physical realm. Just like you are looking at the Grand Canyon, or you are looking at the majestic Himalayan mountains, or you see the expansive Amazon. All these things, when you are seeing these natural, stupendous wonders, as even stuns your head. Perhaps if the appearance of God is there, it shall also stun your head for some time, but he shall disappear. When it disappears, you shall remain with a memory, and that which remains as a memory is not the truth. The truth should be always a reality. The reality never becomes a memory, sir. The reality means always is as it is. If it becomes a memory, it is no more the reality. Then it becomes another thing of the past, a thing of the future yet to come. If the truth becomes a memory of the past, or you are waiting for a future to happen, it is no more truth, sir. The truth means present right now here as it is, and there is nothing called anything else in this world but present and present and present. Past and future are pure imaginations. It is just an imaginary line, sir. This particular point is, think of it, this is an imaginary line. The moment this wave of time touches this point, it becomes present. Here it is future. When it crosses it, it becomes past. But in reality, from the flow of this, from this particular point, from this standpoint, past is here, present is here, future is here. This imaginary point, if you take it away, there is no past, no present, future, nothing whatsoever. It is just an eternal flow. Same thing also, sir. As long as this individuality is there, all these considerations shall be there. But once this individuality is gone, there is no question of you are trying to remember this reality. Because in whose presence you are remembering everything, that indeed is the reality, that indeed is the God. That is what Bhagavan in the 10th chapter so gloriously declares. Hey Arjuna, Aham Atma Gudakesa Sarvabhuta Asayastita. I am the self in all the beings. Aham Atman. I am the consciousness, this self in all the beings. You say I, he says I say I. The meaning of the word I is same in all the beings. There is no question of an Indian eye, an American eye, an Australian eye, a brown eye, a black eye, a green eye, a yellow eye. None of this stuff is there. In the consciousness there is absolutely no differences whatsoever. And from this standpoint of the physical body, if there is a differences, it is better be differences, because if physically everybody looks same, it will be a tragedy. If the whole thing, all the time, everything looks the same, it will not no more be a wonderful world to live in, sir. That there is a differences is beautiful, but to discover that undifferentiated pure reality behind all these apparent differences is the ultimate in enlightenment and wisdom. And that is what Bhagavan says. To see the God as it is, when you see the thing of the God, please for God's sake do not confine him to one particular form. Yes, with that alone we have to begin. There is no choice. The child cannot begin with an idea that God is all pervasive. That interest, that understanding is not possible. He cannot just grasp it. He is a child. My teacher, when I had been to village, my school teacher, village school teacher, one day asked me, because whenever I go to village, always I am in a playful mood. Doing something or other, always, go and talk with the old man and this man, that person, always swimming, something, somewhere I am doing. So he says, what is this? You have become a religious person and you are supposed to be doing puja and worship and meditation. How come you are hanging around? We have never seen you sitting down in meditation. I said, look, when you were, suppose when I was learning things from you when I was in first standard, second standard, whenever you are telling two, you have to show two things. But when I went to college, when the teacher says two, he doesn't have to show me two fingers. Getting that point, please? At one particular point, because the child cannot grasp what the two is, you have to say two and show two fingers also. In the college days or school days, you don't have to, in the high school days, you don't have to be, whenever it says two, you have to show the two fingers also. Is it necessary? Because these symbols, you have gone beyond, you have grown out of it. That does not mean, for God's sake, don't say that, for I don't sit down for meditation or not puja, none of this stuff. I mean, it is there. It is something, once you grasp it, you go beyond those things. Every moment your life becomes a worship, and that is what Bhagavan says. Every action in your life must be a worship. Never convert the worshipping into an action. Today what you have done is, worshipping is a sacred action and every other action is useless. Are you getting that point, please? So if at all any time somebody asks you, paint a wise person, you shall immediately put a dadi variety and a jata variety, matted hair, this and that, and never the person shall be a safari suit. Never he shall be with a Savile Row suit. Impossible. That is not truth, because how can a wise man be coated, booted, suited? How can a wise man be like that, sir? You have absolutely missed the whole track. That is what already you have seen in Gita. I don't want to go into that. But what I am telling is, in the beginning, definitely we do need the puja, mantra, chanting, and this particular statue worship has to be there. Thereafter, slowly you have to transcend and go beyond it. Because if just please think of it, the necessity of this thing is because of the reason that when you look at the world, there is nothing called a God existing. It's always a mountain, it's always a tree, it's always leaves, it's always animals, it is a crocodile, it is these things, but never a God is existing. Suppose you want your child to ask questions on cricket, you have to take him to a cricket ground. If your child, you want him to ask questions on tennis, you have to take him to a lawn tennis ground. If you want to ask the child to ask questions on maybe aeronautics, you have to take him to aerodynamics in aeroplane and stuff like that. You have to show him so that the child tries to understand what the principle is. Now, how exactly the man is going to ask the questions on God if there is no temple for God? Are you getting that point, please? Once he sees that, then he shall say, what are you doing? What is this puja means? What is this God means? These questions he shall start questioning. So if you have not put these ideas into the child's head, from the very beginning, the child will not know what exactly is to do. So even from the very beginning, you cannot give him that idea that God is all pervasive and you are a part of him. The child will not grasp what it is. Let him begin, grow up with a faith. But ultimately that faith must be converted to the knowledge itself, into a reality itself. No more it should be a belief, because believing in God is a false statement. As even believer, please understand, a believing means it is not knowing yet. Now suppose you say, I believe there is life in Mars. What does it mean? I believe. It is still not a knowledge. There is a difference between knowledge and a belief. A person who doesn't believe is a believer because he believes that he doesn't believe. A non-believer also is a believer because he believes that he doesn't believe. Because what is that something which he doesn't believe in? If he knows that something, what is the disbelief? It becomes a knowledge. So this is something, a very, very peculiar thing, sir. Here you have to begin with a faith, pending discovery, and ultimately try to grasp as to what it is. Nobody shall tell you, you must do the puja. What for? In the beginning you do that, then you understand, and then continue it effortlessly. It is just like, sir, when you are going down into the road, suppose this milestone is there, that this is Port of Spain in another 20 kilometers. After having crossed that milestone, is it necessary to stop the car beyond that milestone, then shake it off? Why? Because there is no necessity for you. Remove that milestone and throw it and go. Is it necessary? Definitely not, because the other person is coming. For him it is necessary. So temple, puja, worship, these things, maybe it has solved its purpose for you, but thereafter the other one is coming. The persons are coming behind. The next generation is coming. How are they going to ask the questions unless they are exposed to this type of thoughts? Therefore it must be maintained for the sake of the others. At any time, for God's sake, never make God a philosophical convenience. That it is something as though to beginning to explain the creation the God is brought about. No, sir. Just like this particular flower is, not because the book says so. Because of your argument, please understand, a thing is existing not because of your logic, not because of rationalization. Or it is not going to be dismissed just because of a non-acceptance. The acceptance of the believer doesn't create a God. The non-acceptance of a disbeliever does not dismiss a God. The acceptance of a believer doesn't create a flower. That non-acceptance of the disbeliever does not dismiss the flower. The flower is irrespective of your belief and disbelief. A thing is not produced by your belief. A thing is not produced by your disbelief. It is something thing is. It doesn't depend upon your rationalization or lack of it. Same thing also in relation to the God, the reality. If it is there, it doesn't depend on your rationalization or your dismissal of it. A person becomes a great philosopher because he dismisses the God. The another person becomes another great philosopher because he accepts the God. He must be laughing his heart out in wherever he is. All over, therefore he can't laugh. What to do? But that's what exactly it is, sir. In a sense, there is no question of he existing. It is not something, a rationalization which creates the God. Neither it is something a person's disbelief dismisses God. He is existing. Do not make the philosophical convenience, please. Because ultimately, if the understanding of one's own self does not bring in that type of sublime devotion within yourself, your knowledge is totally useless. That is where you can see Vyasa, the great author of Bhagavatam, when he has written Brahma Sutra, the Mahabharata, all these great granthas he wrote. Wonderful things he wrote. Everything on sharp, rational thinking. All that so far we have talked, sir, it is top-class brain. It is not something of stupid stuff is here talked about. If your mind is not that type of sharp, you are not going to grasp exactly what is talked about. That's what they say, uha poha vichakshana. The mind should be as sharp as a razor's edge. That type of sharpness is going to help you in grasping the absolute reality. Usually the ideas are, when nothing works anywhere, come to religion. Unfortunately, if you have been useless in all the fields, you shall be equally useless here also. It's rather more useless here. By simply sitting down, closing the eyes, nothing is going to happen. Previously, you are active and fool. Today, you are inactive and foolish. Nothing is going to happen, sir. Nothing going to change. It is because the mind must change. That perception must change. So there is no question of, in the name of the God, simply sitting down. It needs a mind which is absolutely, it must be sharp. And by contemplation, it must be sharpened. But suppose there is a person who says, that he just dismisses the God because it doesn't exist. Now Bhagavan Vyasa never did that. After writing everything on this knowledge, total formlessness, nirguna, unqualified Brahman, the absolute consciousness, having described it, still he was not satisfied. Then Bhagavan Vishnu, Narayan comes in front of him, as the story goes, and tells him, write a book on devotion. Then he writes Bhagavatam, which is a Bhakti Pradhana Grantha, where the devotion is beautiful. And there, after writing it, he felt absolutely thrilled. It is because in this knowledge, it is like if you do not have this devotion, your heart is become like a stone, sir. There is no flowering, there is no tenderness, there is no softness, there is no sublimity, there is no love. Because it is mere information. Sometimes you can come across such people. Anything you tell them, they have the logic to dismiss it. What type of living is that? It is just like while analyzing the forest, you lose the beauty of the forest. Analyzing the beautiful flower, petal by petal you have analyzed it. Now you have completely distorted and destroyed this flower. What is the living? Exactly, sir. While you are analyzing, it does not distort this creation, doesn't distort this God, doesn't distort this mind, rather brings about an ultimate fulfillment, a culmination, a blossoming, a flowering of an intellect, where these type of sublime emotions are dominant. There is no question of your being absolutely proud and arrogant that now I have understood the truth, I have dismissed the God. None of this stuff, sir. And this is where you can see that all world's thinking, it comes to this point. When they say, all that you see is you are not. You go to JK, XYZ, any type of Krishnamurti and all that type of philosophers and thinkers, the people, they come up in the moment of time, like a cult figures. They come up, very, very sharp, no doubt about, sir. But then what happens is, they go on talking about something from the individual standpoint. You are not this creation, you are not this world. All that you see, you are not. Beautiful explanation. Beautiful revelation. That is the first step in scripture. But they never take you beyond that. Unfortunately, what happens is, now the person thinks he is the most important. God doesn't exist. Nothing else is existent. It becomes a godless reality. There the person becomes so perverted, nothing happens. Maybe he can live with this idea. When he's trying to pass on that idea to the next generation, it does not work. That is why any time in the world you can see, cult figure means always one. There shall be no more anybody to keep the tradition going. At one time it completely dies away. It is because the person had his imagination. The next man has no imagination. It is just like one day, this mullah, he had somebody presented him a duck, and D-U-C-K, one big duck. So the mullah wanted to, oh my God, it's a beautiful duck. Let me make some nice soup out of it, and I alone am going to drink. Nobody I am going to give. So he closed all the doors from all the sides and started cooking the duck. And the smell goes everywhere. So one fellow comes in and says, Mullah, what are you doing? Now the mullah says, look, I am cooking this duck, I am making some duck soup. Now what can he say? He says, I am making some duck soup. He says, where do you got the duck? This gentleman gave me. Oh, he is my friend. Now when he says he is his friend, now what can mullah do? So when the mullah is going to eat something, he said, okay, take something, sir. So he gave little to him. And when he left, another person comes in. He said, mullah, what are you doing? He said, today only all guests. He wanted to eat alone, and that is the day everybody comes in. So he says, what are you doing? Oh, we are making some duck soup. And one fellow came and, I saw somebody leaving your place now. He is a friend of a friend, he had just come and I had to give him some. I am his friend. So he gave him also some. By the time 10 fellows have come and each one telling friend. When his 10th fellow comes, now there is no soup. So he put some water into the soup. And when he gave that to the 10th fellow, now the 10th fellow got a little angry, a little upset. He said, what type of soup is that? It's all water. He said, what can I do? If you are the friend of the friend of the friend of the friend, this is the soup of the soup of the soup of the soup. So this is what happens in a cult figure. When this type of flowering of imaginary ideas are coming in, next generation becomes the thought of the thought of the thought of the thought. At one time it completely dies away. Nothing happens, sir. Whereas in a tradition is kept burning like this. Aji Bhagavan says, the very tradition begins like that. Sadasiva Samarambham, Shankaracharya Madhyamam, Asmadacharya Paryanta Vande Guru Parambaram. Begins with the Lord himself. In between hundreds of lines of teacher, Narayanam, Padmabhuvam, Saktim cha Tatputra Parasaram cha, Vyasam Sukam Gaudapadam Mahantam Govinda Yogindra Yathasya Sisyam. It goes down like that. Narayana himself, Padmabhuva, Parasara, Vyasa, Suka, Gaudapada, Govindapada, Shankara, like that Asmadacharya Paranta, until this teacher. Same light is kept burning. That is what when you see in the Gita 4th chapter Bhagavan says, Imam vivasyade yogam praktavana abhyam vivasvana manave praha manu rikshaka vyabravid evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduhu shakalena eva mahata yoga nashta parantavah. Hey Arjuna, in the very beginning of the creation, I am the one who gave out this knowledge to Lord Son himself. Vivasvana manave praha, he told to Manu to Ikshaku. Evam parampara praptam. This is how traditional the knowledge is handed over from the teacher to student. Now you can say, sir, how do I believe that is given out by the Lord? Simple thing, sir. When you do creations, create something, carefully listen please. When you create something new, you always give out a handbook along with it. When you purchase an Olympus camera, you purchase a videotape, you purchase a video machine or something, very sophisticated computer or camera, something like that. The producers give along with it a handbook also, to tell you how not to goof it up. Because suppose you put up a wrong switch somewhere, the whole thing blasts off. So this is a handbook comes along with it. If you with your creation send one handbook, you mean to say that God is stupid? Definitely you have not created, definitely I have not created. As I told you already last 2 days with reference to that, when he is himself the creation, naturally there is revelation also. And that is what we call the Vedas, the Ved to know, the book of knowledge. Once, as they say, the test of the pudding is in eating. Go through the Vedas, see, understand what exactly it is, and thereafter you discover, try to see for yourself whether the mystery is unraveled or still continues, sir. It shall be totally clear, because when you recognize, see yourself what you are, the whole creation is dismissed into one's own self. Or you can say that even having understood yourself, the creation continues to be. Both ways it is mysterious, both ways it is beautiful. In the total dissolution as well as in the appreciation of these forms, it doesn't make any difference, sir. So this is how, when you say that in the beginning, the Lord himself has given it out, and that is how the tradition continues. Anyway, so there is no question of bringing in God and dismissing God. And such a life, if at all somebody is there to dismiss this God, naturally what happens is perversion comes in life. For God's sake, there is no such philosophy which is godless. Even when you talk about the godless, listen carefully. In the total moment of meditation, when neither the individual is there, the totality also doesn't exist. Listen carefully. When you as an individual do not exist, you don't have to accept the existence of the totality. As long as you are there, better not drop God, sir. When you go, that God automatically goes. But if you are existing and you are trying to dismiss the God, you shall have the worst of pain in your life. It is because this is where the whole thing becomes a perversion, and the person destroys himself. Anyway, here Bhagavan says, the man of understanding, he lives 100 full years, acting every moment in life, considering that every action of it is worship. It is because, I'll give one example, then I go into the next verse, or else it will go long time. Just think, one action I'll show you. Let us see a perception. Please think of it. A perception, just seeing. How the seeing can be a perception. Now suppose this is a flower. Look at this, sir. Please. This is beautiful. Huh? This is just fantastic. Okay, just to go through it, please. You see that? And I'll explain it. So this is just like a flower here. Now this flower by itself is not a good or bad thing. It just is. Now you must consciously perceive. When you are looking at the flower, see every color of it, every bit of it. And when you are perceiving, just true to this object flower, the thought also is taking place. You perceive through your eyes, and true to this particular flower, the thought also takes place. And this flower as though is offered unto the eyes, and thereafter the thought is formed. And that thought also, you are just perceiving within yourself. Listen carefully. You are just aware of the thought. Do not bring in that idea, it is a good one and bad one and small one and big one, none of that stuff. Just an awareful perception. Absolutely free from judgment, non-judgmental, total awareful perception. where the flower is seen as a flower and nothing is allowed to be added there. So every moment if you can have that type of perception, you see things as it is, there is no question of getting affected by it at all. But the moment suppose you see the flower and with that flower 10 things come up around it, surrounding it, naturally you are always living in the past. You never living in the present, sir. The flower comes up along with the 10 thought also comes up. If it comes up by habit, do not dismiss it. Understand that is natural. But even accommodate those 10 thoughts also. It is like this is where you can see every day this ritual is taking place, Havan is taking place. And this island is famous for Havan. Everywhere there is Havan, smoke and fire, no problem. Now when you look at this particular thing, now please see that what exactly this Havan means. When you are listening, please see that. When you are doing this Havan, onto this fire, 7 or 5 priests or 7 priests, they are going on pouring this ghee. Usually that story goes like that. Usually that method is there. What it means is, please traditionally see what it means and where you have ended up. These 5 sense organs are 5 fires, onto which every sense organ is offered as ahuti. Every sense organ is an offering into the, every sense object is an offering to the sense organ fire. And then in turn, these 5 sense organs, they are offering every perception to the fire of mind. And in mind, there are not 5 different thoughts, understand. The thought of the flower has no smell. The thought of the object, the thought of the sound has no noise. The thought of the taste has no taste. It all becomes one thought. It is offered into the fire of mind. The mind, the fire of mind, in turn is offered to the altar of consciousness, the fire of consciousness. In that there is everything dissolves, nothing else is there. If you abide in that absolute, and thereby consciously see that this objective world is being offered into the fire of your sense organ, in turn it offers to the fire of mind, and the mind is offered to the fire of consciousness, that is yourself. Abide there, naturally, it is a continuous sacrifice, a yajna, a ritual, all with the time taking place. But if you do not see that, what will happen is, you shall be lost in the smoke. That is what Sureshwaracharya, the great Sankara's disciple, he was the greatest of the Karmakandin. But he was always lost in that. He was thinking that's led him to the ultimate goal. And then Bhagavan Shankara goes and defeats him in argument, and he becomes one of his best disciples. He becomes known as Mandana Mishra. He was in the beginning. Later on he becomes Sureshwaracharya, one of the greatest of this type of saints in India. And he writes an Naishkarmya Siddhi. It's too big stuff. But anyway, just to gather this information, so fantastic. Naishkarmya Siddhi writes, where he says, about this knowledge, you cannot do anything because it is your own self. And there he says, he becomes so critical of this ritual, where he says, those persons who are all the time doing the ritual, they usually do not see the truth because the smoke has gone into their eyes and they have lost the perception. They lost the sight of reality. Are you getting that point? A way of talking, and doesn't mean therefore no ritual. I told you what it means. You begin with that ritual so that ultimately you can understand yourself. Now because you are so involved with that, I am talking to you about that. When you are chanting a mantra, you are saying, Om Ganesha idam swaha namama, Om Indra idam swaha namama. It all belongs to Indra, nothing belongs to me. All belongs to Ganesha, nothing belongs to me. All belongs to Indra, all belongs to Vishnu, nothing belongs to me. When you say na mama, doesn't belong to me, doesn't belong to me, then in the beginning, in the process, in the beginning there may be a resistance. But once you discover that indeed nothing belongs to me, it becomes easier. This physical body, idam, it is always yours, O Lord, na mama, it is not mine. The thoughts belong to you, it does not belong to me. Once you have given your body, given your mind in the ultimate offering, you have done the finest ritual, the most interesting thing you have done, sir. But usually, without giving himself up, he gives everything else to the fire and never burns himself up. Like Pasuvali, just think of it. You must have gone into a traditional person. Sometimes you see Pasuvali, a goat is sacrificed. Sometimes some animal is sacrificed. What exactly that Pasu means? Please understand. The Pasuvali, when you say that, it is not that the goat must be sacrificed. It is that you must be a goat to sacrifice a goat. It's something terrible. You cannot really do that. You know that the God is happy with the blood. It is not so. What it means, please understand. Pasu means, the Pasu means, Pashyati iti Pasu. Think. Pashyati iti Pasu. He who only sees and never thinks, he is a Pasu. An animal is one who sees but never perceives, he never thinks. This morning I had gone to Maruga just for a drive. and they were making some the fish net out of the wire. I said, how is it so big hole? How the big fish can get in? And how can does he not get out? He said, no, there is one way, like a funnel, the fish will go in, but the fellow cannot get out. I said, how come? If he can go in, he should also get out, isn't it? Because if the path is big, he gets in, and he must be able to get out. No, he said the fish will forget the way he has gone in, but he will never find the way back. It is because he only pashyati, he only sees but never thinks. If he thinks, what will happen? If there is a thinking fish, you can never catch him. If there is a thinking dog, you can never catch him. If you are at this moment so smart, it is because the guys cannot think. And if the animals start thinking, the man is in trouble. The moment he starts, that is why also sometimes you keep the people bereft of thinking so that you can lord over them. Not only ordinarily in this world, in the spiritual realm also. Never give the right thinking because you don't have. And in case you have, don't give it to him, because if he is released, what will happen to you? Your business is down. Isn't it true, sir? That is something tragedy. So anyway, because pashyati the pasu, he only sees but he never thinks. And that one individual, he who perceives and never thinks, that individuality, that must be bali, that must be sacrificed. But instead of sacrificing that, the person sacrifices a goat. What will happen? That will not work out, sir. So see that every ritual has a meaning. It is not something to be dismissed. You begin with that, but transcend. Then you have done it. The person dismisses that, never gives himself up either. What happens? The person is lost. Another person go on continuing that, but never gives himself up. He also is lost. One who does is lost, one who doesn't do also is lost. Are you getting that point, please? What a thing! It is because the message is not understood. So that's what Bhagavan says here anyway. Every action must be beautiful worship, and as a result of which you never get affected. One who doesn't do that, Bhagavan says in the last verse we saw that, Asurya namate loka andhena tamasa avruta tanste pratyavigachanti yecha atmahanojana. The people, those who do not understand themselves, it is like they are committing suicide. Somehow or other this physical body is gained. In the human life alone, you have got this chance for liberation, this freedom. Nobody else seeks for freedom. Nobody else seeks for this redemption. Only the human being looks for it, liberation. Having done this body, if the person doesn't make use of it in order to understand himself, Bhagavan says, it is like committing a suicide. Any other thing you have achieved, sir, is no achievement. You can have, please understand, this is something very, very hard not to crack. Because this point, something must be very clearly grasped, sir, that anything that you achieve is beautiful, nothing wrong in that. The physical achievements are wonderful, but the one who is inside is always incomplete. What is to be done is